I'm bringing this Lone Star stick burner up to 225 degrees so we can get this cook started. You don't have to have a stick burner or a Lone Star in order to do this recipe. You just have to have a pit that you can use that'll hold a consistent temperature and do indirect heat. Every great meal starts with great materials. So you want to get the best pork butt / pork shoulder / pork roast, whatever you want to call it. You want to get the best one you can get. However, it's really forgiving when you cook one of these because they have so much fat. I am going to go over it and take off all the hard fat and trim any excess fat off. It's just unnecessary. There's plenty of fat on here to provide plenty of flavor. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking a stick of butter, I melted it down, and I'm going to add a can of pineapple juice. And you're saying, why pineapple juice, Mike? Well, what you may not know is pineapple juice contains bromelain, and that is a natural meat tenderizer. It's not that a pork butt necessarily needs to be tenderized like this, but it definitely isn't going to hurt, and it can only provide more flavor and more tenderness to our pulled pork. So in a grid pattern, I'm going to go around and shoot this mixture into the pork butt. You'll know you've got it done when it starts spraying back at you out of the holes. Now I'm going to dry the surface of this pork butt off. That way I can put a little bit of oil on the outside. And when the oil mixes with the rub and the smoke and the heat, it just produces a perfect bark. Speaking of the rub, we're going to use Malcolm Reed's Killer Hogs rub. Malcolm has really perfected this rub. I use it on a lot of stuff. It's just a great all-around rub. This is a big piece of meat. You need to make sure I get plenty of seasoning all over this guy. I mean, in every little crack and crevice, and then let it sit and let that meat just kind of absorb it. And then I'm going to hit it again. And then I'm going to cut some slices on the outside, cross pattern, and then I'm going to hit it again and make sure that, you know, that rub gets down in there nice and deep. Like I said, this is a large piece of meat. It's really almost impossible to over season it. Now that the smoke is nice and clear on the Lone Star, it's time to go ahead and put this pork butt on the grill. And put it top shelf, about center. I'm also going to put the fat cap up top so that as it renders and melts, it just kind of soaks into the meat. After an hour and a half, I go ahead and check on it, and we're going to spray a little apple cider vinegar all over the outside of this guy. And again, what we're going for here is bark development. That cooler temperature of that apple cider vinegar is going to attract more smoke, give us a nice bark and a more smoky flavor. 3.5 hours in, it's time to go ahead and put our pork butt in a pan. Now, I'm not going to cover it because I still want to get as much smoke on this as I can, but I am going to put it in the pan so I can start retaining the juices. The juices are going to mix together with the butter and the pineapple juice that I'm about to put in the pan to create just a magical sauce that you mix together when you pull the pork. Man, this thing's smelling amazing. Time to go back on the pit. I'm gonna raise the temperature up to about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. After about another hour, and we're 4.5 in, I have the color I'm looking for, and that's how you know when to wrap. When you have that final color. Look at that bark. That bark is just amazing. Well, time to go ahead and cover this guy with foil. We can trap all the moisture inside, make sure that the meat stays moist, and it's going to cook a little faster. You can raise the temperature up to 275 here if you want to. We're going to make some very simple homemade tortillas. There's no better topping on a taco than some really good coleslaw. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make some homemade, simple coleslaw. Starts with a head of red cabbage, and we're gonna go ahead and slice this up. For me, I like my coleslaw very small, so I'm gonna go ahead and chop away at this for a bit. Then I'm gonna add a package of shredded carrots. And then the magical ingredient here that you don't find in a lot of coleslaws is some canned pineapple chopped up pretty finely. After we have those items in a bowl, we're gonna go ahead and start with a cup of mayo, a tablespoon of white vinegar, and a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. For some sweetness, we're gonna go with a tablespoon of honey. For some flavor, a SPG, any salt, pepper, garlic mix that you have, about a teaspoon of that. And then also about a teaspoon of celery seed. Don't leave out the celery seeds, good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and mix this together, then I'm gonna dump it on the cabbage and blend it all together. So after being wrapped for about 4 hours, that's a total cooking time of around 8 hours, I think it's about time. I pull the foil back, I start probing it. The feel is what you're looking for. When you stick your thermopin in, does it feel like room temperature butter, or does it have some resistance? If it has some resistance, take it up a few more degrees, but keep checking it. There's a very fine line between tender and juicy. You're gonna start probing around 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes they can go all the way up to 210, but most of the time they're somewhere like a brisket, somewhere between 200 and 205. But most importantly, go off the feel, not the temperature. Once I got that feel, I went ahead and yanked it off the pit, put it in the oven with the oven off, and just let it sit for an hour and a half. Now it's time to get these tortillas finished up. This wasn't the easiest meal. I'm not gonna lie to you, okay? When you're doing everything from scratch, it takes some work. It takes some elbow grease. You know, you gotta get in there. It takes some time and put the effort in. Typically, the payoff is worth it. It speaks for itself. Oh man. Feel free to put a barbecue sauce or something on here if you want.
But for me, this is where it's at. Give this a shot.